We'll let you guys come on in, get some participants in. I will be fielding questions, so if you have any questions during this webinar, go ahead, put them in the Q&A panel and the chat, and I'm going to hand it over to OJ to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Stingray, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the NPPA Live's Master Your Gear webinar series. We've got a good one in store for you tonight. We have Christine Lien joining us. Christine Lien has been a CNN photojournalist for the past several years on my team. Christine shoots with the PXW X400 daily for live shots and packages, and she covers Capitol Hill quite a bit, and she covers the White House quite a bit. In fact, I saw some pictures on social media and saw her in person yesterday. She was out there at the White House shooting with her PXW X400, shooting the pool material that all of your stations got through the network pool. So that was Christine's work on the very camera that's being featured this evening. From Sony, we have Joe Perisman. Joe is the guy. Okay, so we all have ENG cameras, right? And we go into the menus. We're like, what are all these menus? No one knows what these menus are except for the engineers. Joe's the guy who tells the engineers what they do. This is North America's foremost expert, hands down, on Sony ENG cameras. He's the guy that I call when we're having problems at CNN with an ENG camera, and I can't figure it out. So Joe, thank you for joining us tonight. Christine, thank you for volunteering to be on stage with Joe tonight. You guys are going to do a deep dive into the PXW X400, extremely capable ENG camera. With that, let me turn it over to Joe and Christine.
Okay, so what I want to do tonight is I'm going to go through a PowerPoint first, and then we're going to go through all the menus. If there are any questions anybody wants, then that's what we're going to do. Let me just go and share my screen. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is talk about the controls that people get stumped on, or they don't understand what they really do. So on the front of the camera, on the bottom, people oftentimes complain about the access to the front mic level control. They say there's only a 90-degree axis, it's very hard to turn. They don't realize that there's a guard that's there to protect the mic level control. You slide it to the left and you have full access to it. I've had people who have used these cameras, Sony cameras, for about 20 years or so, and they've always had them, and they never realized that that was there, and they felt that was worth the price of admissions, right? Right there. Next, there is the shutter. In the up position, it's off. In the down position, you can cycle through these different speeds from 1/60th of a second over to 1/2000th, and then there's ECS. That stands for Extended Clear Scan. That has become very important. In the old days of CRTs, we used to use that to dial out the noise bar or the roll bar that you would see when shooting CRT screens. Well, CRTs went away, and LCD screens don't have those, so there's no problem. But we now have LED lights, and LED lights do have a problem, and that's why you should know how to activate the ECS. You basically turn that on, you select the ECS, and then use the rotary knob in the front of the camera to dial in the frequency that minimizes or makes the noise bars go away.
One thing on shutter, I don't shoot over 1/250th because then it starts looking a bit choppy, or there'll be lines on the screen, and usually I'll only use it when it's when I have the ND filter on 4 and it's still too bright, I'll hit the shutter to get it a little bit higher. So that's one thing on shutter.
Yep. What happens is that if you use a very fast shutter speed, you also get a stroboscopic kind of an effect, and so that wheels will be, they can actually look like they're turning backwards.
Yeah, make sure I would turn off the shutter.
Yeah.
When you're doing a live shot.
Yep,
but when you're shooting packages, it's
absolutely. Okay, so people oftentimes ask, what are these two posts and this piece of rubber there for? The purpose of that is to keep is actually to secure this lens mount, because in the old days, during the heat of shooting, some photographers would accidentally, when they reach for the iris, they would take off the lens. Seriously. So this will kind of like keep you from doing that. If you're not changing your lenses, then just leave it on the bottom position. If you're changing lenses all the time, just leave it on the top position over here. This is the menu knob. You turn it to change settings or to navigate, and you press into set. People with muscle memory from the old days, this is what we always use. But this is not what some of the newer photographers are doing. We'll get to that in a moment. Over the power switch, there is an access door, and this is where you put in you can put in a SDXC or SDHC card, and that's called the utility SD card slot, and that's where you save off all of your settings for the camera, and that's how you recall them. This is one way of turning on the menu, and this is a multifunction switch depending upon what you're doing. If you go down, it's the escape. If you go up, it'll show you status menus, or it will cancel what you've done in your menu settings. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
Like
so I usually have an SD card in there, and CNN has different settings. So depending on what shoot we're on, we try to match each other. So because sometimes the production side wants a different quality of video versus like when we're doing live shots for regular news.
All right. What Christine just said is extraordinarily important. I'm going to stop here and just reinforce it. She said that we have to match each other. We're going to talk about the menus and how to set up the camera. And there are certain things you can do with your camera that's different than everybody else's because it does not affect the pictures. But anything that's going to affect the look of the pictures, you've got to be sure, even if you've got better eyes than anybody else, you've got to be sure that what you're doing matches what everybody else is doing, because when the station or the network is putting together the final package, everything has to match. And so you can't go off on your own and say, okay, this is really cool, I got something better than anybody else. It'll stick out like a sore thumb. So that if you do come up with something better, share it with the chief photographer, and they'll figure out if they want to do it or not. The other thing that you have to do is you have to run it through the full editorial process, because what may look good to you may be very difficult to edit. And that's a very, very important thing.
Yeah, in the local news station I worked at last, everyone changed their own settings. So everyone's camera settings look completely different. So yeah, make sure there's one setting that everyone uses and everyone matches.
Hey, CNN has something really interesting. They actually have a setting that matches the Canon EOS DSLR cameras. And that's actually brilliant, because that makes sure that everybody they can cut a package and nothing sticks out. Anyhow, like every good computer, there are multiple ways of accessing the menu functions. So the on-off can be done by this little switch under the front door, or by the menu button if you pull down the panels on the side. The set button is either pressing the set button or pressing in the rotary knob. The back button is either you flick the escape button down or you press the left arrow key. And up down is either you do the up down arrows or you turn the rotary knob. People who have muscle memory tend to use the controls on the left, and people who don't tend to use the controls on the right. It's faster actually, once you know how to do it, to use the ones on the left. Plus, this is the only way to control the camera when it's up on your shoulder. When it's on sticks, it doesn't make a difference. This is the normal screen. I'll show you the standby mode. This is the normal screen and cache record modes. The camera has simultaneous record, and it lets you know that it's a simultaneous record mode by the SML. What the simultaneous record does is that it will record the same video to 2 cards in 2 different slots. This is for insurance purposes, or it lets you share your media with 2 people, or you hold on to one piece of media and give one to the reporter. This is if you're doing something of great historic importance and you want to make sure that you're covered. if from the main screen you toggle this escape switch up, you get to the status screens. So there are many screens. I'm going to skip the bulk of them. The first screen, everything here is just about is on your main screen anyhow. The second screen is very important because it's the only place that you're going to see channel 3 and 4 audio levels from the viewfinder. So a lot of people will turn it to this screen and then turn off the status. Even if you keep the status off for weeks at a time, as soon as you go to status, it'll go back to the last screen that you were on, so you'll always be right on this screen. This is the screen 5 of 9, and this shows you what the assignable buttons are. Clearly, if you set your camera, you should know what they are. You wouldn't be looking at it, but if you pick up somebody else's camera, it's nice to know what they did. I want to show you something here. On this particular screen, someone set the switch number 3 to be zebra, and I'm very much against that. And not because I'm against zebras, I'm very much in favor of zebras. It's that the assignable buttons are a scarce resource, and don't waste it on something that you have access to. And so, for example, the zebra can be turned on and off by the front of the viewfinder, and it's pretty straightforward to just do it that way. Now, that being said, what I'll oftentimes do is put the record button on the camera, and on like button number 4 or button number 5. You say, well, I've got 2 record buttons. I got one on the front of the camera and one on the lens. What do I need a third one for? Because those are hard to reach when the camera's up on sticks, and putting on top of the handle makes it really easy. Screen number 7 shows you the media status, and yes, there's a life percentage for some of the media, and you can pretty much ignore that, but it's just nice to know that it's there. And then if you do any networking, the last 2 screens become very important because it's the only way of knowing what's going on. So with that, we're going to go to this switch here, which gives you bars or DCC on or off. That's DCC is dynamic contrast control, and this is similar to auto need from other cameras. So here's an example. This is with dynamic contrast control turned off, and you'll see every time that the lights flash and nothing's happening. I hope you can see that. Okay. The next screen, this is with dynamic contrast control turned on. Every time the lights flash, you'll notice that the sky gets dark and then it gets light again. Okay. What's happening is that the exposure happened to be set just at the point that when those lights flash, it lowered the knee point, and it basically made the sky a bit darker, and that's what you were seeing. So whether you're going to use dynamic contrast control or not, there are times that you definitely want to use it. There are times that you definitely don't want to use it. If you're taking pictures of towers, you certainly wouldn't want to use it. If you're taking beauty shots with things flashing, you probably don't want to use it. But if you're trying to get a shot like in sunlight or open shade with sunlight in the background, it can really help. So for example, this is a shot of a fire hydrant in front of my house with the DCC turned off, and I chose the exposure carefully so that this is just burnt out. This is just a little bit overexposed. I turned on the DCC, and you notice here, this is now brought into a proper exposure. So you say, well, I could have done that just by lowering the iris. Yes, but if I lowered the iris, then the background would have gotten darker too. By turning on the DCC, the background stays the same. Now, if I wanted to, I could have done the same thing by going into the menu and just lowering the knee position. Okay, these are the assignable buttons. We'll go through those more when we actually get to the menu. The important ones over here are this. This is switch number 2. That's a hard switch. That's the only switch on the camera that if you change it, when the camera's turned off, it will do whatever it's going to do, because it's not being read by a computer based as a momentary contact. This is physically changed. So this is typically used either for setting the camera input or for cache record.
Yeah, I
Uh,
usually have mine on cache record for number 2.
Yeah. If you're not taking pull feeds often, I would do the same thing. In fact, traditionally, that's exactly what people always use it for. And
Yeah,
by the way,
usually, yeah,
yeah.
sorry. I use it for like perp walks, or if we're waiting for someone to walk, walk
Yep.
by, and you need a couple seconds
Right.
and you weren't paying attention or something like that because you've been standing there for 3 hours. So that
Yeah.
it's good to have.
Yep. Okay. The next thing is that there are 2 more switches on the top, and there's this bar that will that is a guard that will cover these switches. And a lot of people don't know how to move the bar. There's a simple trick. You push down in the middle of the bar, and you push forward, and it moves very, very easily. And that will then reveal the buttons. To pull it back, you pull on both sides of the bar. The reason why is that there's little catches right here. I don't know if you can see it right here, but there are little catches, and we press down in the middle, that will slightly deform this piece of plastic, and it goes right over those catches. If you try to push it forward using your 2 fingers on the sides, you're basically jamming into the catches, and it's very, very difficult to work with. And there's the last programmable button. That is the return button on the lens. Okay, on the back of the camera, going to just go a couple of things. Number 1 is that output number 1 is always clean feed. Output number 2 is clean feed, or it can be overlays. What is it? It's a menu selection. And the answer to any question you have is that it's a menu selection. This lets you take in a pull feed. And what's really beautiful about this is that the camera won't do an up conversion, but it will do a cross conversion. So if someone's giving you a 720p signal and your camera's set to 1920 1080, don't worry about it. The camera will automatically convert it, or vice versa. That if your camera's set for 720 and you're taking the 1920 feed, no problems. These are the settings for the inputs that are on the rear of the camera. Line is analog, line level. ASCBU is digital input, and the mic can be modified. It's either with or without phantom power. On the left side of the camera is where you put in the media primarily. And so let's talk about media here. The native media for the camera is called S/S. That's how it's pronounced. And going up from the bottom, S/S Pro was the first media that we had, and that has been since discontinued. Then S/S-1, and I'm saying type C because actually it's S/S-1, now it's up to C. This is the lower cost version of the cards. And then there's S/S Pro Plus and Pro X, and these are faster cards. So the max read speed of these cards are over here 3.5 gigabits or 10 gigabits for the Pro X. That means that you can really pull off the data from the card super fast for getting your story to air. The max write speeds are listed here. There's 1.6, 3.2, and 4.8 gigabits per second. And once again, for most things that you'll be doing, the S/S Type 1 is fine. The S/S-1 is fine. Sometimes you need to go to the Pro Plus. There are very, very rare times that you need to go to the Pro X. And the reason why I'm saying it like that is because it's not inexpensive. Okay, nothing is cheap. It's just not inexpensive. You can also use a media adapter. Okay, and Sony's media adapter is called the Meet SD02, and it can take either SD-XC cards or SD-HC cards. Okay, and these have to be my cards, so this was not pulled from some catalog. These are my physical cards. All the cards have to be class 10 or faster. If you're going to be using these cards, don't waste your money getting cards that are ultra fast because this has a bandwidth limitation as it is. So anything faster than class 10, you're just wasting your money anyhow. The next part's kind of like, you have to understand this, it's important. The SDXC cards are 64 gig or larger. That's by definition, and their file system will be exFAT. The SDHC cards are 32 gig or smaller. There's nothing between 32 and 64 gig, by the way. SDHC is a secure disk high capacity. SDXC is secure disk extended capacity. And because of the limitations with a file system, the only codec that is supported by the SDHC is MPEG-2 420, because this is the legacy format that used FAT. When we went to exFAT, that's when we introduced XAVC series and the MPEG series HD, and obviously we still support the legacy MPEG HD, the MPEG-2 420. So this is important because if you're going to be using the card, be sure you're going to use the SDXC card. You get a much better experience, and the files are much easier to work with. Basically, this is the same system that was, this being the SDHC, is the same system that was used with the original EX1 camera and the EX3 cameras. One last thing about this, if you take one of these cards, the SDHC card, and you format it in a computer so it is now exFAT, you try to put it into the camera will say, no, I'm not accepting that. Because we are very religious members of the Standard Disk Memory Card Association, and the standard says that if it's SDHC, it's got to be FAT, and we will not budge from there. So just so you know, don't try to cheat. Okay, these are some media format limitations, and this is all basically based on speed. So, for example, the XAVC I and the L, you have to have the fastest, or the L200. These are trying to work at 2 to 600 megabits per second. That's why you need to have these very fast cards. The SBIS-1 won't handle it, and the SDXC won't handle it. If you go to XAVC I HD, so this is going to work at 110 megabits per second. The SBIS-1C will handle it, but the type B and type A will not handle it because they're too slow, and the SDXC won't handle it. The L50, 35, 25, everything handles it. The slow and quick motion, so it can be done by all the cards except for the SDXC. The Essence Mark recording, same thing. And by Essence Mark recording, that's where you can do shot marks or we can do clip flags. But you cannot do that on the SDXC cards. And simultaneously record one card, that's actually not even an issue for the X400 camera. This is for the Z750. I just put it in here just so my chart will be complete. I wouldn't have to do it twice. Okay, seamless playback. That's the ability to play back, to play clips back to back without any pause or break. The clips have to have a minimum duration in order to do that, so the buffers can be managed. If you're doing XAVC-I or XAVC-L, you need to have 4 seconds for the Pro X, the Pro Plus cards, and you need 8 seconds, twice that, for the 1C card. And with the SDXC card, you cannot play seamlessly. It will always pause in between clips. On the MPEG-2 HD, that's a 50. That is 422 50 megabits. That is 2 seconds and 4 seconds for the 1C. And again, it's not possible with the SDXC. All right, let's talk about proper card installation over here. When you insert the card, there always is an arrow on the card. Okay, and that arrow is supposed to be facing forward. And you have to make sure that that goes in first, and the label, this label should be facing the front of the camera, okay? This is the correct way of inserting the media adapter. This is the incorrect way of inserting the media adapter. If you've inserted it this way, you've just ruined your day. In this position, the adapter is stuck and you can't pull it out. If you try to yank it out, you will ruin part of the camera, and you will take something that should have cost you nothing to fix, and it'll cost about $1,000. So you really want to be knowledgeable and careful about this. And if you don't feel comfortable with it, bring it back to the station and they'll fix it for you. It's very simple. Here's what's happened. If you take a look at the edge at both edges actually, of the standard cards, there is no bar, but on the Meade SDO2, you have this little piece of plastic that extends. That's for structural rigidity, and that extends into the rail that this card is riding on. You see, it's not here on the S/S-1, and it's not here on the Pro Plus card, but it is over here. When that goes in backwards, that'll hang up on a spring. People try to wiggle them out. It rarely, if ever, works. So people try to use force, and that just gets expensive. The fix is very simple. You cut a piece of paper, or you can take thin plastic, which is what I prefer. But by the way, a business card is too thick, and you cut it to the width of the adapter. It's supposed to be 34 millimeters plus or minus 1 millimeter. It has to be about the width of the adapter. You put it on the front side of the adapter. So this is flipped over. You still gonna put it on the front side of the adapter and not the front where the camera is. It goes in front of the label. You carefully insert the paper all the way into the media slot as far as it'll go, and you'll feel it getting past the spring. Once it's past the spring, hold the paper and the adapter together and gently remove it from the camera. If it doesn't come out, push everything back in, wiggle it some more, and try it again. Okay, and when you do this, the adapter should be halfway in and out of the camera. You don't want it all the way in, and you don't want it all the way out. It's just got to be somewhere in between. You can't have too many labels. This is what I do with my adapter. It's like, making sure that, because I oftentimes lend this to people and they don't realize this, so I make sure this is here. Any questions on that? Okay. The next thing is, this is where the media goes in, and as you put media in, there will be lights that will turn on. If you see an orange light, you do not remove the media. You wait for it to turn either green or to turn off, either one, and you can take out the media. The reason for it is that if it is orange, that means the media is being accessed, and if it's the write function, you will obviously interrupt the writing. So the problem with that is that's on the wrong side. So you look on the camera side of the card, and here is an access light. If this is on, it means some light has turned orange. Okay, one or both lights have turned orange. During this time, you can remove any card that you want as long as the lights are off. So you can remove you can move the proxy. You cannot remove this card over here because that light is on. Okay, if you should take it off, you'll get a message that says that media needs to be restored. Restore media now. And the answer to that question is always yes, execute. If you don't, and you want to put the card into your computer, first of all, the card will be locked. You won't be able to do anything with it. So that's one thing. The second thing is that if Microsoft ever asks you, oh, do you want us to repair this card? The answer to that's no, because they don't know our internal management system, and you'll basically ruin it. So you always execute, and you do this. And by the way, you have to do this in the kind of a camera that was used when you had a problem. Okay, so if you did this in an X400, then you have to restore it in an X400. It doesn't have to be the same X400, but it does have to be an X400 camera. You can't do it in any other model or in a reader. It'll say restoring media, and it'll be done, and life is good. Let's talk about media recovery. If you have S/S clips, the clip has to be at least 2 seconds or longer, and this is supported in all the XT-Cam cameras. If you have an SDXC card in a Meade SDO2 adapter, it's not supported in any of the shoulder cameras, not the X400, the Z450, the Z750 cameras. It is supported in the Z280 camera, but the clip has to be 1 minute or longer, not 2 seconds, but 1 minute or longer. And an SDHC cards, it's not supported in any camera. Okay, a couple quick things here. There's some USB ports on the handle, and get that. First of all, you cannot charge your cell phone with any of these cards. So you can't charge your cell phone using these ports. This is
Yeah,
meant
I've
for-
tried, it doesn't work.
Yeah, this is meant for a thumb drive, and this lets you copy everything to the thumb drive from your card. I don't like it personally because you can't pick and choose. It copies the entire card. But if that's what you want to do, it's there. The bottom one turns this into a very expensive card reader, but oftentimes people don't have S-by-S card readers, and all you need is a USB Type B cable to Type A cable, and you're good to go. On top is another USB slot, and again, you cannot charge a cell phone for it. This is strictly for a Wi-Fi dongle or 4G LTE modems. I'm going to discuss this very briefly because we really need to have a separate session for a deep dive into networking. You can do a tremendous amount with it, but there's a whole lot to it. If you want to talk about it, we certainly can. This is the dongle that comes with the camera. It is a low-powered dongle. It is a 2.4 gigahertz only modem. It's subject to interference from other 2.4 gigahertz devices, but it's free. And if you're in a closed room, you want to experiment with it, go for it. It's good. This is a bigger modem, and this is a full power modem, 2.4 gigahertz to 5 gigahertz modem. This works extraordinarily well. And by the way, you cannot buy a third-party modem and just stick it in there and hope it's going to work, because it most likely will not work. I saw one in one place that actually did work, and when I compared the performance of it to ours, it was about a third of the performance. By a third of the performance, I'm talking about what the data rates were and everything. It was just terrible.
Hey Joe, we have a question asking, what is the biggest limitation to using the SD adapter, using the SDXC card, like speed, format, all that kind of stuff?
In my opinion, for typical things that the E&G news photographer is going to be doing, the biggest problem that you have is that there's no recovery. In other words, you're typically not doing overcranking, undercranking when you're doing news. You aren't doing the slow and quick. You're just doing normal work, and typically you're going to be set to something like XAVC L50 or L35, and that's it. So you're fine. So the only problem that I have is that the cards will fail sometimes. And people call up and say, is there anything we can do about it? I said, no, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, like sometimes the card fails. SD cards are not terribly rugged and robust, and they have a limited number of read-write cycles that no one wants to talk about. So that's the biggest danger.
Okay. And now another question coming in asking about with the streaming, when the app asks for a certificate, what does that mean and how do they load it? Okay,
so it depends on which certificate you're looking for. Okay, because there are lots of certificates that are used. So if you're going to be doing a FTPS transfer, okay, FTPS needs a certificate. So if you're going to Sony C, you get the certificate on the Sony website. That's pro.sony.com. You go to the Z280 camera, you get the certificate, you're good to go, and that's how to deal with that. Like if you're doing quality of service streaming, you don't need a certificate. Even though it'll give you the option for it, you don't need it, you don't want it, just forget about it. Basically, if the app is asking for a certificate, you got to get the certificate from the people that are driving that app. Again, if it is like if you're going to Sony C using the Z280 camera, and I'm going to be very careful about it here because I know we're talking about the X400, but the Z280 camera requires a certificate, and that's where you get that from the Sony website. If you're using the X400 camera, it does not require a certificate because we are using a different transfer method that is equally secure and very fast, but you don't need a certificate for it. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, hopefully it does. Another question we had about restoring media. Is there any other outside software that you know of that can restore the media if they're using those?
I know that there's some exists, some is successful, some is not. Sony used to offer that as a service, and we no longer do. I'm sorry to say. But here's the deal. Let's talk about this. If you formatted a card in a Sony camera and you had material on that card, there is no way that I know of to get it back, period. Because when we do a format on a card, it's very fast, it's very thorough, and it's very brutal. We absolutely reset everything on the card, and that's for security, because if you're formatting the card, one of the reasons is that you're going to give the card to somebody else, and you don't want to have them access your old files or fragments of your files. So it's gone. There is nothing left if you do a Sony format. If you delete a clip, then there is software that is available to go and put it back together again, but it better be pretty darn important, and you have to deal with someone who just knows how to do it.
Usually the proxy card will record everything, right? Like I usually haven't deleted it for like months and months. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a great thing that you talk about here. So one of the things that we have is the ability to record proxy. If you're recording proxy at 9 megabits per second, that is broadcast quality. Yeah. And in fact, you can set that up to record independently of your main clips. So some people will actually run the proxy all the time as a background task. So this way, if they missed the major shot, they actually got it, because if the camera was pointing at it, it's still working. Most people don't do that. What they do is that they synchronize the proxy, which is the default workflow, with the regular recording, and this way either they have the proxy. If the main card failed, you've got a backup, or if you want to give the proxy card to somebody, you can. A typical proxy card, like with 64 or like 128 gigabytes, has over like 999 minutes of recording, so it'll last you a long time.
Yeah, you can give the proxy to the reporter to log if you're like driving around or something.
And that's a great thing about giving to giving them to log. And the first thing people say, "Can I burn in time code?" And the answer is no, you cannot burn in time code. Time code is kept as metadata, and it goes with the clip. And you just have to open up the file with a metadata aware editor. So if you use Sony's Catalyst Browse, that's a free editor, that'll work perfectly. If you use something like Adobe, or you use Avid, or use Final Cut Pro, those are all MXF metadata aware, and they know how to read the time code. Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
All right. So there's just a little gotcha here with this. If you notice where this position is, it's right by the handle. So for that, we have this extender that you can get as a part, and it mounts on top of the back of the handle, and then the modem comes with this mounting extender, and then you just mount everything there, and so it sits up on the back of the handle, and everything's free and good to go. At the top of the viewfinder, these are the knobs that will adjust the front and back. These are all standard things. On the mic orientation, be sure that this up arrow is up. If you're looking at camera right now, don't turn it. Don't go changing it if it's wrong. You first have to open up the clamp and take out the mic. And the reason for it is that there are these little fingers. And if you rotate it with this clamp closed, you might rip the fingers. And I've seen more of these with ripped fingers than I care to talk about. So you open it up and you just put it in. This is the front of the viewfinder. Everything here is straightforward. Again, here's the zebra switch, so don't waste a switch on it. This display on off, this turns off and on the overlay. This mirror switch has the following function. This is a viewfinder in the normally closed view. This is up, so you looking outside the loop. I can flip it up from the bottom, but then I'm not looking through the mirror, so everything is reversed. So the left-right switch will flip this, so it's now proper. And there's a top-bottom switch in case you rotate it all the way around, so it's facing the front of the camera, so the talent can see themselves. Then there's a bottom top switch so they're not looking at it upside down. All right, thumbnails and format compatibility. So in order to display clip thumbnails and play clips, the camera's formatting has to match the clip's format. And that's really important. And here's what we mean by matching. One is there's a codec family. Is it XAVC or is it MPEG-2? What's the codec? Is XAVC-L or is XAVC-I? Is it MPEG-2 422 or 420? What's the resolution? Is it 4K? Obviously, this camera doesn't do 4K, but is it 1920 1080, 1440 1080, 1280 720? And what's the frequency? Is it 60p, 60i, 50p, etc.? Okay. So I'll show you some things here. So first of all, if you want to see what the camera is set to, either you can look at the format in the operations menu, format, and it'll show you the frequency, the file system, and the record format. Or you can look in the upper left corner, and you see it shows you here 1440 by 1080, 5994i, HD 420HQ, same information that you have right over here. Okay, on the thumbnail, a thumbnail that's highlighted, there'll be an orange square around it. And look on the bottom, it'll give you all the information about the clip. So this is HD 420HQ, 1440, 1080, 5994i. And this also gives you the duration of the clip and the date it was taken, etc. If you combine these two together, I can see the thumbnail and there's no play inhibited icon on here, so I can play this clip, because if you match up this information here with the information down below, it's the same. It's the same codec family, it's the same codec, it's the same resolution, same frequency. The next clip, everything's the same except for the resolution. This will not play on this camera. If I want to play this clip on this camera, I have to go in and manually first change the camera to match this information down here, HD 420HQ, 1920 1080, 5994i, then I'll be able to play it. Okay? This last clip over here is a different codec and different resolution. So it's not playing for two reasons. So that means if you're going to change it, you have to be sure that you're changing both. And this one, I can't even show the thumbnail on it because it's a different codec family altogether. So it's not MPEG-2, it is XAVC. I changed my camera to XAVC L50 5994i 1920 1080. This first clip, I can't see anything because it's basically a different codec family, different codec, different resolution. The other thing it's got the same is the frequency, and that goes true for all of these, by the way. If I go down to here, this is the same codec, the same resolution, the same frequency. I can play this, but I can also play all these others. In fact, I can play any XAVC-L. Any XAVC-L or L200 clip, as long as my camera is set to XAVC-L. I cannot play XAVC-I clips, though. To play XAVC-I, I've got to change my camera to be XAVC-I. Then I'll be able to see the thumbnails and play those clips. But I get these calls all the time. People say, I get this little icon. I can't play anything. I can't see anything. Something's broken. What do I do? Nothing. You just have to go ahead and make sure that you've got the camera set up properly. And remember, the camera will show you in the upper right corner what it's set to, or look at the menu. And on the bottom, it'll show it will show you what the clip is actually what the clip was shot at, and they just have to match. Okay, so next we have the user menu. So the user menu are favorites. And that's just the shortcuts to various menu items, and this can be edited by you. The operation menu are the camera shooting settings. The paint menu is, this controls the look of the camera. The thumbnail menu are the settings for the clip thumbnail, and also there's some clip management things you can do there, like you can lock clips, you can delete clips, you can transfer clips. The maintenance menu is the camera maintenance and the system management of the camera. And the file lets you save and recall different camera settings. By the way, well, we'll get to that. So these are different menus, and all together, the operations menu, paint menu, maintenance menu, and file menu, all together, they are called the all file. And then there's the user menu, which is kind of like off to the side. When this camera comes to the factory, the factory configured settings are burnt into the camera. They cannot be changed, not by you, not by me, not by a service center. That's called the factory layer. Sometimes certain things need to be changed at a very low level, and that's done by the service layer. This is settings for service center use. There's a hidden service menu. The menu is locked and hidden, and you don't have access to it, nor do you want to try to break the camera and get access to it, because it's really easy to do things to the camera that are going to ruin your shooting experience. So it's just best to leave that like it is. There's a preset layer. Those are the camera defaults, and they're set by you, the user. You say, how do I do that? We'll get to that momentarily. And then there's the user layer. I hate this term user menu and user layer because they have nothing to do with each other. The user menu are the favorites. The user layer are whatever the camera is currently set to. So you get your camera and you set up the camera the way that you want it to be. You go through every menu item, you set it the way you want it. Once you're happy with it, what you do is that you do a store all preset. You go to the file menu, to the all file menu, and you do a store all preset. You can name it or not, and this saves the current settings to the preset settings. So now both of these are going to be the same. You go ahead and you make more changes to your camera. Maybe you need it for a specific shoot. Maybe you were experimenting, but now you want to get things back. So rather than remembering what you did and going back and changing everything one at a time, all I have to do is I just do an all preset. That copies the preset settings back to the current settings, and the camera's back to your presets the way that you want them. Sometimes, however, the camera's all messed up. This could be because somebody borrowed your camera and and who knows what they did to it. Sometimes you did something to the camera, or sometimes you're picking up somebody else's camera and you just got to get moving quickly and you don't know what they're doing. So you just do we choose a clear all preset. This copies the factory/service settings, and this copies it to the preset layer and to the user layer. Now data bubbles up, and so that if there's nothing in the service layer, it'll be the factory layer. That's why it's called the factory and service settings. And so it's copied to both of these, and the camera's back to virtually a first birthday, but not quite. Okay, you can save off all of your settings, both the user settings and the preset settings. You can save those off to a memory device, to an SDHC card or SDXC card that is in the utility slot. And this copies everything to there if you do the all file. And then you can recall it, and this restores everything. So you can have different, different camera profiles, if you will. One might be for normal shooting, one might be for sports, one might be for nighttime, one might be specifically for the White House, whatever. And that's how that works. Very quickly, you can do the same thing for the shortcuts or for the favorites. You can do a store user preset to copy things down. You can do a user preset to copy them back up. You can do a clear user preset to get it back to factory. You can save off just the user shortcuts to a memory device and bring them back. So that's the menu system. I'm going to show you one menu right now that I want to show you here. And the reason why I'm showing it to you here is because I'll go through the camera menus, but I have no way of demonstrating this to you. It's nighttime. I'm sitting here in my basement office. I really can't show you the digital extender. So you can put the digital extender to one of the assignable switches, and you have a choice of doing digital extender digital extender 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, or 2, 3, 4. So this is with the digital extender off, and this is with the lens and full telephoto. This is with it on ×2. This is visually lossless. And if you look carefully, I don't know if you can see it on your Zoom screen. Yeah, there's some color fringing here, but that's my lens. It's not the digital extender. This is ×3. It gets to get a little bit soft. And this is ×4. And yeah, that's soft. But you know what? If you need the shot, if you're doing a surveillance shot and you've exceeded the distance of your lens, you have to do ×4. You get it. Something's better than nothing. Okay. With that,
that one is one of my assignable switches on
yes,
the side of the camera, and it's pretty helpful for when you need to zoom in really, really close.
Okay, with that, I'm going to unfuzz this and I want to go to the camera menus. Are there any questions anybody has that they want to go through anything specifically?
Give them about a second or two to
Yeah.
put them in. Go ahead, go ahead and continue. If something comes in, I'll let you know.
Very good. Okay, so I'm going to skip the user menu. The reason why I'm skipping the user menu is because anything that's in the user menu, yeah,
There it
yes,
is.
yes, that is regular cast recording. Yes, it is. We'll talk about that momentarily. Anything that is in the user menu is in one of these other menus. So we'll just cover it here, and then this is just a way of organizing your favorites. So first, there's the operations menu. There's the format, and you want to make sure that you're set to the way your station needs it to be. There will be a time you may have to change it. And I'll give you the example. In fact, I got a call from somebody from CNN. No, excuse me, it was another network. I'm sorry. And they needed to go to slow and quick, and they couldn't access it. And the reason why they couldn't access it is because their house format didn't match the requirements for slow and quick motion. So we simply gave them what that information was. They changed it and they were done. Format media. If there's a card there, then it'll light up. And as I warned you, it's a one-way street. Once you format it, once you start the format, don't say oops, because you can't undo it. Maybe the NSA can do it. Anybody else? Our factory has tried. It cannot be done. The input output. So over here, the important things here is actually two things. Well, one is the output format. So right now you don't have much of a choice, either standard def or high def. You begin to get choices when you are doing like 60p. Then I got many more choices. You can save a little bit of power by turning off the outputs. If you want them off, I wouldn't bother. And the SDI out to and HDMI super, by default, this is off, but that's what you would see. And so that you can see what I'm doing, I keep it on. And the video out is for the analog out on the side of the camera. No one uses it. Don't worry about it. The super, one other thing here. See the source select here? On my camera, it's grayed out. The reason why it's grayed out is because it is assigned to the hard switch. Therefore, it's grayed out because the camera can't change it. It's changed only if I change it. It goes internal, it can go external, or it can go camera. And just so first of all, I don't know if you guys do a lot of pull feeds, but if you're doing pull feeds, I suggest that you put this to a switch. And the reason why you want this to a switch, because I'll show you something here. If I turn off my bars, and let me open this up a bit and open this. So I'm on external here. Okay, I'm really close to where I can't even focus this thing. There you go here. So you can kind of see what's happening here. I'm on external, but because there's no external feed, I can basically just leave it on external all the time. If I get a pull feed, fine, it'll switch. And if there's no pull feed, it'll just show me the camera. That's not the best idea in the world. And the reason why it's not the best idea is two cases. One is that you're waiting for whatever the event is to begin. So you want to get some B-roll footage. So you're shooting B-roll footage. Oh, there it is. It's starting. You don't want to have to be looking to where to put the cable and to plug it back in. You want to simply throw a switch and you're done. The other case is that during the event, something may have happened in the audience that's more important. Typically, it's something bad, but you want to quickly be able to go from external back to camera. Just throw the switch and you're done. Make sense? Okay. Superimposed, these are obvious. Once again, I'm dealing with the things that are not obvious for you. The record function. So sometimes things are grayed out. Now, the first thing is on the slow and quick. Why is that grayed out? That's grayed out because that only works in a 1920 1080 progressive format. So you have to have the camera set for 1920 1080p. It can be X80CL or it can be X80CI, but it has to be 1920 1080p. 1280 720p is not going to work. If I change the format to this, and hopefully I'm not going to lose you because that's changing all my frequencies here. And I go down to the record function. There it is. I can now turn this on. And if I turn it on, then my frame rate goes anywhere from 60p all the way down to 1 frame per second. Okay. Clip continuous record is something that we don't use anymore. If you want to talk about it, someone just holler, we'll talk about it. It basically, rather than having a new clip every time you hit the record button, you just keep on adding on to one big file. The other thing here is that the cache record. So again, I had this to one of the user assignable switches. And the cache record time on this camera can go up to 13 to 15 seconds. Now let's talk about this. Look, everything here has two numbers to it. There's a lower and an upper number. Why? It's because Sony's very cautious. We don't want anybody to say, you promised me 15 seconds and I got 14.9. Okay, so we just go crazy and we make it a 2-second window. I've never seen it be anything but the higher number. That's one thing. The second thing is that if you've used cache record, do it any way you want to do it. If you've never used it, newbies always go ahead and they will always set it to the highest value. Okay, which makes sense, kind of, but not. If you're waiting for like if you're waiting for the perp walk or for something to happen and you don't know when it's going to happen and you're talking to your friends, set it for 15 seconds. That gives you time to get back to your camera and to turn it on. Okay, because remember that it's been recording the whole time. But that's going to be a header on the top of every clip that you're doing cache record. And if you're doing cache record all day long, you don't want 15 seconds at the head of every single clip. If you're doing it just to cover your slower than preferred reaction time, maybe 2 to 4 seconds is all that you need. Maybe only 0 to 2 seconds. Okay. For general purpose, maybe 8 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever you feel like. But again, don't stay away from 15 seconds if you need it, but don't use it if you don't need it, because you can't get rid of that extra 15 seconds once it's been recorded. Okay. Inner record lets you do time-lapse photography. And I don't know if you want to go through that, but yeah, I'm skipping it unless somebody wants to know about it. The proxy recording mode. So over here, your choices are, you can do HD auto at 9 or 6. You can do 1280 720 at 9 or 6. And then you can do 640. This is basically standard definition. This is substandard definition. So the reason for using something like this is in case I'm sending this wirelessly back to the station, this will go much faster, okay? Depending upon the speed of your wireless. It will give you a really great image. It will be interlaced. It's wonderful. But if you're looking at it on your iPhone, you can't use it because the iPhone and Macs will not accept this kind of a format. They don't have the codec for it. If you're looking at an Android device, or if you're looking at it on your computer with something like Catalyst Browse, it's perfect. You get phenomenally good results. So just anything you do, test it beforehand to make sure that it's going to work for you. If you've got a problem, feel free to call me. Seriously. Okay. And then I choose the frame rate. Actually, I can't choose frame rate, and then I choose the audio channels. It is just 2 audio channels. The assignable switches. So Here's what I set up. The cache record we talked about already. I put it onto here because I wanted to put two. Actually, I really want to put two over here, but I can't put two over here. Because I've got a limited number of things I can put on different switches. And since I can't put that on 0, I put this here, and I put picture cache, and I put the record source here. Christine says she puts picture cache on number 2. That's
Yeah, I do. And I think I have digital zoom on the first one, and then I do have auto white balance on another one, just in case I get in a sticky situation.
All these things make sense. There really is no right or wrong way of doing this. And and like I said, that when the first cameras came out, everybody put picture cache on number 2. That was the default go-to setting. And that only changed probably 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, so I would still say picture cache is where to go if you're not taking pool feeds regularly. You can always turn on pool feed manually. It's not a problem. The color temperature switch. I want to talk to you about this because these are the color so some people say that's old school. I don't need it. I'm just going to do a white balance. I like having it here. So I've got a switch. And here are the settings. I want to explain to you why I set it for this setting for color temperature switch 5600. So first of all, this is the 3200 is the default preset, and that's tungsten. 4300 is fluorescent or mixed lighting. 5600 is daylight, and 6300 is open shade. Electrical CC, if I set that to if I chose that, every time I press the button, it would cycle through 3200, 4300, 5600, 6300K, and say, well, that's great. Yeah, it's great, but it gets very confusing very quickly, because if you change your if you change your memory and you didn't start there, it will add or subtract mathematically. And rather than having 5600, you may see a value like 94,000. I mean, it just gets crazy, or you can see something like I got 2200. Where did that come from? So I stay away from this, and the same reason I stay away from this, because again, this is mathematically adding what the color temperature is with what I'm setting it to, assuming I didn't do it here. That sounds like I'm talking in tongues here. I can make it very simple. When I did my color balance on memory A, if I was in preset with 3200K, and then I switch it to 5600K color, 600 CC, it's going to add the difference between the two to the setting, and it just gets strange. That's why I like using this. This is a very simple, hard and fast switch. You press it, you're going to get 5600K. That's all there is to it. Okay, we talked about the record source. I talked to you about the digital extender already. And by the way, some people prefer only doing digital extender too, because they don't want to cycle through everything. And they say, look, I am not going to use 3 or 4. I'm just going to use 2, so just use 2. Some people actually put 2, 3, 4 here, and on the lens return button, they may put on digital extender 2, because that's one that they're constantly using. Okay, 4 and 5 are the buttons that I always go to for changing for different things. And like I said, that record is a good button to put on there. Some people put a slot select switch. Some people put the auto trace white on there. There's just lots of different things that you can put on. Turbo gain is something I highly recommend you put on one button somewhere. And what the turbo gain does is that's the 4th gain setting. And the turbo gain can be anything you want it to be. All the gain settings can be anything that you want them to be. And so, for example, you may have turbo gain set to be -3 dB. You say, well, that's not turbo. It's a 4th gain setting. And why would you do that? Because maybe it's really bright outside. You get your filter on number 4. You're almost closed down. You're still not good enough. You set the turbo gain to be -3, and you can instantly go to -3 dB. Okay. Another thing you can do here is I can go to lens zoom, either wide tele or tele wide. And what that lets me do is that now, notice here that if I did one, the other button is the other way. And that means that if I touch the top buttons, that's a zoom. and the speed for that is controlled by this switch here. So if I dial it, so I ramp it all the way up to 99, that's my, now understand, I'm too close to the camera. That's why it's going in and out of focus. Okay, so in fact, I got the macro on and, but this is just to show you what I got. If I go in the other direction all the way, it's nice because you can get a slow creeping zoom. And it's very hard to get that slow of a zoom controlled any other way. All right, and if you want to set things back, here's a trick. On on those two switches that are under the front panel cover, if you take the one that's on the left, you flick it up, you'll see it'll say cancel data. You say yep, and right back to where I was. If I had saved this, let's say I go to here, and now I've saved this, so now it's no longer cancel data. It's actually go back to the preset layer. I flick it up, say preset OK, say yep, it's done. And then there's another mode that I can hold in for 3 seconds. It'll say clear preset. That means to go back to the factory layer. So that's something that you can do. So using that method here to put this back very quickly, I just say preset data OK. And actually, this is off because I never set them. My bad. Okay, and then over here, set this turbo gain. Oops, turbo gain. So now I set it off. This is now here I have focus magnifier. What that does is that simply shows in the viewfinder. It does not affect what's going out the back of the camera. It does not affect what's being recorded. It just gives you a 2 times magnifier. And that's 2 times on top of anything else, so that if you have digital extender set for 4 and the focus magnifier on, you'll actually have times 8 times in the viewfinder. Okay, the online button by default is set for network client mode. If you don't have network client mode, change it to something else. Don't waste a button. Things I would recommend, maybe maybe use that button for turning proxy record on and off separately. So you can basically go here to proxy record start stop. Okay. By the way, I would never use flash band reduce. That softens the picture, and we really don't recommend doing it in the camera. You're better off doing it in post. Now, if you feel you have to do it, so go ahead, but just remember, if it's not needed, turn it off. Okay, I don't know where that is anyhow. So that takes care of that online button backlight. Get rid of that. Okay, those are the user assignable switches. Okay, let's see how much time we have. Okay, the viewfinder setting, again, this is your preference, what you want. I prefer type normal. Some people like having color. I don't like the color because I find that it's not as sensitive, and if I set it to red and I go outside, everything's in focus, all my grass turns red. I really don't care for that. Some people love it. Some people like going to the color blue. They find it works very well. I find that the normal peaking works best, at least for my eyes. You may find differently, but just be aware of that. Markers, you can make single bombardier sight. The gain switch, we talked about this thing here. Shockless gain is something that by default it's off because you're changing it while you're working live. What shockless gain does is that it will pop from one setting to the other. If it's turned on, it will drift one into the other. Auto iris, you don't use that, so skip it. The zebras, we do have 2 different zebras. Zebra 2 is meant for white clip. Zebra 1 is meant, this just determines what gets displayed. There are 2 things here that I want to point out to you. One is that if you're using Sony batteries, put this on auto. If you're using third-party batteries, leave it on voltage, because many third-party batteries don't properly report what their life expectancy is, and you may get hurt by that. The other thing is that if you like having your distance, the focus position in feet, you change it to feet instead of meters. Just depends on what you want. You can turn off anything else that you want to turn off. The warning LED is only the basic kit viewfinder doesn't have it. If you use the OLED viewfinder, then it does. The white settings, again, there's not a whole lot to talk about here except for the ATW mode. Leave it on natural if you're going to be using it. And the reason for that is that in the auto trace white mode, if you set it for pure, so the choices are pure or natural. If I set it to pure, then I get a pure SMPTE white, which is very bluish. Natural uses fuzzy logic to give you pretty much what your eye sees. And if you wanted to use, instead of memory switch B, you can put ATW on the B position. I prefer leaving it to memory switch B and using one of the other switches for ATW. Okay, offset white, change how the white balance works. When you do a white balance, it'll do a white balance and then it'll shift. As many people as this will help, it will hurt, so we're not talking about it. This is the shutter. You have two modes, speed or angle. The angle is for the Hollywood crowd. It doesn't change anything. It just is a different way of dealing with it. Slow shutter, this lets you do frame accumulation. This goes up to 16 frame accumulation. This lets you get shots in low light with much less noise. And you do get the effect of light streaks, which zone. You can set it to wherever you are. Someone use this. So on my camera here, I'd set it to -5 because I'm in the Eastern time zone. Then this is the clip naming. So if you want to name it